My name is Toni Lane. Who I am? Well, that's a good question. Who I am? I am currently a transvestite dancer living in London, and essentially my life is about dancing, and I also sometimes like to dress in bright and colourful ways, which I enjoy. It makes me feel good, and I like dancing, and I like the joy of dance and travelling on music. I basically like dancing with other people, partner dancing, so I dance as a man with women, and I dance as a woman with men, and I enjoy that feeling of doing something together to the music. That's something that's I've been doing now in London for the last 15 years, and I've enjoyed that very much, and I'm getting better at it. I'm reasonably okay at it now. It's a long journey, but the pleasure of being able to travel on music together and do something together, and in tango, for example, it's basically, they say, one heart and four legs, and you're moving and dancing together, and that's lovely. And to do that as a leader or as a follower is beautiful. But swing dancing is also great fun because I dance. It's lively, it's energetic, it's up and full of life and full of fun. So that's essentially where I am now. I live, as you can see, in a rather messy flat, and living here on this Barkentine estate on the Isle of Dogs. There's another completely different aspect of life, is trying to be part of the community. When I came to London 16 years ago, I thought to myself, right, my ambition is to dance and to be able to be and live as a transvestite and do what I wanted to do. And I was looking for somewhere suitable to buy, and I looked at lots of different possibilities, and in the end I chose this flat on the Isle of Dogs. The number one reason obviously is the view. It has a fantastic view. I also thought that living in a tower block might confer some advantages in getting to know other people in my building, and whether you like people or not is one thing, but at least getting to know people and respecting different people and having them respect you and so on, I thought would be an advantage for personal security and enjoyment of life, to be able to feel that one was known and a positive part of a community. I noticed by comparison where my brother lived in Walthamstow, that when I stayed there we only knew the people on either side and nobody else in the street. So living here, I thought I would be able to join in the community, and I've become an active member. Straight away I joined the local estate committee and the residents committees and the leaseholders committee and all this sort of thing. So I've been involved in the local thing. In fact, that has been a lot more problematic than I thought. Being part of the community is good, but being a tenant of a social landlord has brought with it a whole load of other problems. I won't go into all the details of that now, and the kettle's boiling, but that's a good cue. But basically, suffice it to say, there are problems in London with social landlords, be they councils or be they housing associations, and I just wish that they would behave honestly and openly and treat residents with respect and dignity instead of in an arbitrary and offhand and dismissive manner. So that's really the big problem. All right. Okay. So a little bit about my life. Basically, I was born in London, but I never lived here. I was born just after the war, and then my family, my parents, moved to Cornwall, and I grew up in the west of England, in Cornwall. And then when I was 15 years old, my family, my parents, brothers and I, emigrated to New Zealand. So I completed my schooling in New Zealand and I went to university there. I studied agricultural science at Massey University and gained a degree in that. And after that I worked as a government agricultural advisor for the Ministry of Agriculture. So that was what I did in New Zealand. While I was at university, I married, and we have my ex-wife and I have a daughter who's now grown up, and I have grandchildren now. So that's rather nice. When I was an advisor, I also bought some land that was a fairly poor piece of land. And it was 130 acres of land, and I developed that into a little farm, and that was something, that was an ambition that I wanted to do, and by going to New Zealand I was able to fulfill that ambition of having my own farm. Then we decided to travel. We came to England for a visit to visit my family, and my wife's family originally came from Greece, so we travelled to Greece and saw where her roots were. Going back, when we went to New Zealand in 1962, we emigrated and we went there on the Canberra. That was quite a big shift, and it was a long way to go. It was 5 weeks by boat. And we didn't imagine that we would be rushing to and fro. Once you go that far, it's a completely new situation. And it took a little while to readjust to the reality of New Zealand, but having adjusted, I decided that New Zealand was where I wanted to be, and that was going to provide me with the thing that I wanted to do, which was to have a farm. So that was fun. When we came back to England and visited it, I thought, well, I know England, I grew up here, but after a 17-year absence, coming back to England in 1979, I found it was very different. People were very different. It felt very different. I had changed, England had changed one way, I had changed another way, and it was quite different. And in fact, to be quite honest, that although there were a lot of things I did like, there were a lot of things that I didn't like about England, and I suffered probably as much culture shock coming back to England at that point as I did in going to New Zealand in the first place. And it sort of made me realise many of the different things. If you just live in one place for one time, you treat that as the normal. Well, London is quite abnormal. New Zealand is quite abnormal. There isn't such a thing as normal. There is no normal place on the planet. Everybody has got their own ideas, cultures, idiosyncrasies, ways of surviving, or ways of having fun, or whatever. So that was an important realisation. Anyway, after that, I decided to travel and work in different countries. So through my profession, I worked in aid and development projects. I took my family with me, and we lived in Peru and worked there. So I went there in the 80s a couple of times. Then at the end of the 80s, I split from my wife, and my daughter by that stage was at university, and she was sort of under her own steam. So then I found another lady, and I went to Papua New Guinea with her, and I have a son who was born there. and then after that, Papua New Guinea wasn't an ideal working circumstance. There were various difficulties, and so we came to England, and then after a few years I found that my new family, my new lady, already had older children. It didn't work. It wasn't an ideal situation, and I thought, right, I'm going to. I went and worked again in Nicaragua in 1994 for a year, and then after that I thought, right, I'm going to do something completely different. I thought I'd like to have a change. If I hadn't have studied agriculture and been an agriculturalist, what else would I have liked to have done? And I thought I would like to be a dancer. So I thought, well, at my age, this is my late 40s by then, I'm too late to be a performing ballet dancer. I'm not going to be the next Rudolf Nureyev. It's not going to happen. So I have to be realistic about this, I think what I'll do is I'll concentrate on partner dancing. So I started to learn ballroom dancing, Latin, Argentinian tango, salsa, rock and roll, everything that was dancing with two people dancing together. And I danced at straight venues and at gay venues. And after a little while, I realized that out of all of those, Argentinian tango was in fact the most sophisticated in terms of lead and follow, and the ability to actually lead somebody to do something, and the ability to follow another person's movements. And it's a very beautiful dance. There is no single one way of dancing tango, but it is about the connection, and that is the great thing about it. Swing dancing, on the other hand, is fun and exuberant, and I've enjoyed that, and I still carry on with the ballroom dancing, and I'm an okay sort of ballroom dancer. Also, in coming to London, I have for a long time wanted to explore other areas of my sensuality and sexuality, and I thought that if I lived in London, this would be a good place to allow me to develop my own way of expressing myself in the way I dressed, particularly, and experiment with clothes. So I did this a little bit. I was already doing this a little bit from occasionally, even when I had the farm, I liked dressing up a bit, but there were other priorities. There was the farm, there was the family, my job, a lot of other things. So it wasn't a high priority, and you can't do everything. I didn't have the resources, and I didn't have the money or the time to spend on it. But coming to London, I thought, well, now I'm going to experiment with the way I dress, and I liked, particularly in the mid 90s, I liked to go out clubbing, and I would have some quite exotic outfits. One of my favourites was as a leopard skin bodysuit and a long black wig and long black boots. That's quite stunning. And I would go to nightclubs and dance there. But that was solo dancing and just sort of night clubbing. But doing that, I found that I met transvestites and transsexuals, and I went to some transvestite clubs, and I learned how to make myself up and so on.